Show them no mercy!
In every zombies game, there is at least one map that embodies the game that it's in, where the map is made purely for the game's engine. The point of that map is to be an introduction to the game mechanics. The Black Ops 4 engine had a lot of drastic changes, and the map that embodies these changes the most in Black Ops 4 is 9. 9 was the only map in Black Ops 4 that was specifically designed with the Black Ops 4 engine in mind, and that's why people think that this is one of the best maps in that game. Not only that, but the design of the map was way simpler than most of the Black Ops 4 maps. The map design is very simple to understand. There's a central hub in the middle and 4 towers around you. Each tower has 3 floors. And every tower has one perk residing in its top floor. And also every tower has a challenge you can do. Doing all of them will get you Pack-a-Punch. Pretty simple stuff. You can get everything opened up pretty early, making the early round experience on this map pretty much spot on. There is an extra part to the early rounds though, and that's the challenges. Every tower has a banner beside its entrance, and you can knife it to start challenges. Each challenge gives you one reward. The rewards vary from power-ups to self-revives to free weapons to free Pack-a-Punch weapons and finally a free perk. However, each player has unlimited amount of challenges that they can do per game. It's a nice addition to the map that isn't required for any fundamental mechanic. What isn't as nice though is the boss enemies on this map. There's 9 boss enemies in the map 9. The first boss enemy out of the 9 boss enemies in the map 9 is a tiger. The tiger is basically a hellhound but with more health. The next 2 boss enemies out of the 9 boss enemies in the map 9 are the gladiators and the brawlers. These 2 are what the game describes as a heavy zombie. Both of them are heavy zombies with complete opposite abilities. The gladiators are a slow enemy that can throw boomerang axes at you, and the brawler is the opposite, a fast melee based enemy that has the ability to jump across the entire area. Then there's the catalyst zombie. Catalysts are zombies that have a type of elemental ability. There are 4 types of catalyst zombies. The first is a fire element, making the zombie have slow movement, and once you get close to it, it explodes, taking away half of your health. The second is a lightning element, making the zombie have the ability to make a banshee scream that blinds you. Then there's the poison one. When it gets close to you, it gives you damage over time, which stops you from regenerating health. And the last one is the water one. Now this one doesn't actually attack you. What it does is that it goes around the zombies and buffs them, giving them increased damage, increased health, and regenerating their health if they lost it. And finally, the 9th boss enemy out of the 9 boss enemies in the map 9 is the only mini-boss, and that's the Blightfather. The Blightfather spawns when it impales a zombie from its inside and comes out of it. The Blightfather can shoot projectiles and also grapple you with its tongue, making the map a little bit more hectic for a short period of time. My main problem with these guys is not their individual abilities, but their spawn rate. After you pass the 20s, every single boss enemy except for the Blightfather constantly spawns every single round. If you don't have a specialist weapon on hand, dealing with them can be very fucking annoying. Especially the gladiator. The guy soaks up so many bullets. And again, it's not like they're a difficult enemy, it's just that it makes getting through the rounds a bit more tedious for me. Anyway, let's talk about the wonder weapons. Black Ops 4 introduces a new specialist system. Before beginning a match, you have to pick a specialist weapon, and once you spawn in, you already have the specialist weapon. What Treyarch did is, instead of doing a quest to get that specialist weapon, you now spawn in with it, and as you kill more zombies with your specialist weapon, you eventually get more abilities. This feature is unanimously hated by almost everyone that still plays this game. Not only does it ruin the quest line for getting these specialist weapons and makes it so that every single Chaos map has the exact same specialist weapons, but it also fractures the entire early round experience of zombies. And really, for a map like this based on 4 towers, 4 different gods, it would have been the perfect opportunity to make a 4 wonder weapon set. But instead of that, we get quite possibly one of the most underwhelming weapons in all of Black Ops 4. the Death of Orion. The Death of Orion is a scorpion that you hold on your hand and you use it to shoot lightning. Now look, that does sound cool, but this weapon is really not that good. The weapon has a single fire shot and a charge shot. The charge shot basically acts like a Wonder Waff, but it kills them way slower. The single shot would be useless without this glitch, and even with it, you run out of ammo so fast that you don't even get to use the thing half the time. Granted, it's really good against the boss enemies on this map, but again, due to its lack of ammo, you don't use it for very long. Its main purpose really, it's in the Easter egg. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. I will talk about this map's gameplay in a bit, but there is something that I want to mention about this map and all of the Chaos maps in general. You're gonna notice a theme in this video that the storytelling of these maps is fucking awful. The story is so poorly structured that things just happen out of nowhere, things are just not explained, and it removes all depth from the Easter eggs, especially the characters of the Chaos storyline. But I'm gonna talk about that more in the Voyage of Despair section. Let's go into 9's intro cutscene now. Our 4 characters go to Greece after the events of Voyage of Despair. They stumble upon this large cauldron full of vapor, and then some random lady tells them to breathe the vapor in. And the characters completely comply, and they do that with absolutely no questions asked. Cool. Anyway, they're transported into ancient Rome. I'm not really sure if they're in a hallucination or they actually transported back in time and affected space and time. I don't know. Anyway, some guy that we never know his name takes the Sentinel artifact and activated it. So the Easter egg, like every single Chaos map, is revolved around completing the trial of the Sentinel artifact. Now, this trial is easily the one that makes the most sense. After getting Pack-a-Punch, you have to complete 4 challenges for every single god. The gods being Danu, Ra, Zeus, and Odin. After that, you have to finish the boss fight, which is the chosen champion by these 4 gods. And once you do that, you complete the trial, ending the Easter egg. As for the gameplay of it, the gameplay of the 9 Easter egg is actually really good. All of the 4 challenges are really fun to do, but we start off with the worst out of the 4 being the Dano challenge. The Dano challenge first requires you to make a fertilizer. Out of all the steps in this Easter egg, this one is by far the worst. The reason why is because almost every part requires you to wait at least 1 to 2 rounds to progress. You go to spawn, take a piece of wood, put it on top of fire, wait 1 to 2 rounds in order to get it back. Take a pile of shit from spawn, put it in this area in the Zeus tower, wait 1 to 2 rounds until you get it back. Take some random skull that has 12 spawn locations in the Pack-a-Punch area, and then turn it into mush. Pick all of your components, and then go to the Danu tower, put it in this spot right here, and then you have to wait another 2 rounds. Now yes, you can get more setup while that's going on, but I would rather get set up while I'm doing the rest of this Easter egg. The rest of the steps, however, are actually pretty good. There's a couple of little things that could have been ironed out here and there. For example, I think the Odin lockdown is a little bit too long. It's literally 4 to 6 minutes of pure downtime with nothing really going on. It should have been shorter and a bit more hectic, but it doesn't degrade the experience that much. And now that you're done with all of the 4 challenges, you can start the boss fight, where you fight not 1, but 2 elephants. It is by far one of the greatest spectacles in all of zombies. Now the boss fight is really not that difficult. If you have a weapon that you can cheese through this, like the Spitfire or the Hades or the Helion Salvo, you can finish it really quickly. But regardless, it's still pretty cool. You're fighting 2 fucking zombified elephants. While 9's Easter egg has a couple of problems that could have been ironed out, it's still one of the better Easter eggs in Black Ops 4. It's just unfortunate that the story is so weak on this map. Again, in the ending cutscene, we just defeated 2 elephants and then suddenly we're captured. The dude that we don't know the name of put his hand inside this portal thing and now he's hurt. And then Scarlet says something and he's like, behead these motherfuckers. And then they're dead. And that's the cutscene. If you look up any video on YouTube of people who just completed the Easter egg back when the map came out, not a single person in the comment section knows what the fuck is going on. But it's fine, because 9's storytelling isn't nearly as bad as the other launch map that came with this game. Welcome to the Titanic map, Voyage of Despair. I find find it very interesting that Voyage may be the most hated zombies map of all time. I don't think Voyage is anywhere near close to the worst zombies map of all time. Hell, I don't think it's even the worst zombies map in Black Ops 4. But I can definitely understand why people hate this map so much. Voyage has two major flaws in it, one of which is the story, as I mentioned in the 9 section. The other one is the map layout. When the developers were making this map, they tried to make it as close to the Titanic as possible. And while they succeeded with it, the problem is that the developers sort of completely restricted themselves in how to lay out this map. First of all, the map is one of the largest round-based zombies maps of all time. Each end of the ship has 4 floors, and the middle part of the ship has 5. And most of the rooms in the map have a bunch of debris inside of them, which artificially makes the map even bigger. But not only that, but the debris blocks certain pathways, which makes the layout very confusing. It has been so many times where I use fast travel on this map, and it takes me 5 seconds to process where I'm at and how to get out. One of the main reasons why this happened to me is because of the fast travel being laid out in this very confusing manner. On the spawn side of the ship, there's one teleporter up top and one teleporter down. So you would expect that to be the exact same thing on the other side, but that's not the case. On the other side, there's one teleporter up and 3 teleporters down. And then there's this one location downstairs in the middle of the ship where you would expect it to take you to the top, but instead it takes you into the other side of the ship. Now, I personally have gotten so used to this layout that I can basically get to wherever I want to go very quickly. The thing is, not a lot of people can. If you don't progress through Voyage in a certain rhythm, the map can be very frustrating to play. But once you get the rhythm down, the map actually becomes very simple. You can basically get the entire map opened up by around 7. And with everything opened up, you can get access to Pack-a-Punch by interacting with 4 panels. The Pack-a-Punch, like Blood of the Dead, can teleport around the map, but unlike Blood, the game tells you where the Pack-a-Punch is by going into one of the panels. But I would definitely prefer if the Pack-a-Punch was just stationary in one area. As for the enemy types on this map, the Catalysts and the Blightfathers from 9 are also on this map. There is an additional enemy type though, which is the Stoker. The Stoker is basically a combination of a gladiator and a brawler from 9, but instead of throwing axes, he throws fireballs. The difference is that his spawn rate is significantly lower than both of them. And since there's no tigers on this map, I prefer the enemy types on this map more than I do on 9. Another thing I like about this map that most people don't is the Kraken. Now I will say that its utility isn't nearly as good as any of the other good wonder weapons in zombies, but it's still pretty good. It acts as a mega-sized shotgun. One of my favorite things about the Kraken is that you can constantly get ammo for it. When you kill catalysts with the Kraken, they drop an alternate ammo type that you can use. And every time you use them, you refill your ammo. Now, every alternate ammo type is a bit different. There's the water one that creates a tiny little ice storm that slows zombies down. The poison and fire ones are pretty similar, but my personal favorite is the lightning one, where it basically ragdolls the zombies when you shoot them. It's kind of like Thunderwall from Black Ops 3, but it's a permanent upgrade on every shot. I will be honest though that this wonder weapon is a bit underwhelming, especially when you consider the lore that surrounds this map. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Easter egg of this map. One thing I have to talk about before I start is that Treyarch made entire comic books based on the Chaos storyline. There's so many crucial and important details in that comic, and almost none of it is mentioned in Black Ops 4. The first Chaos map that we ever get is literally in the middle of the story. Now that is a very big problem, because not a lot of people read the comics. Hell, not a lot of people knew that there were any comics in the first place. I'm pretty sure most people watching this video right now have never heard of the comics. And since we're dropped literally in the middle of the story, it's almost impossible to get invested. It's like, imagine you let someone watch One Piece and the first thing they start off with is the Marineford arc. I mean, try watching the Voyage of Despair intro without any context of the comics. At first, we're looking at characters who devise a plan to steal something. The scene and the characters are introduced very slowly, so the questions that you start to ask are those of intrigue. For example, you would be asking about what are they trying to steal and why. Slowly as the scene progresses, we know that one of the characters' father has enemies, and these enemies were expecting our 4 characters. To this point, this scene is great. And then this guy comes out of nowhere, takes the item and the necklace, and then there is not a single line of dialogue for 20 seconds. And then He puts them together, and then a zombies outbreak happens. What? There's so many things happening at once that it's difficult to compute what's going on. We literally went from a group of people going on a heist to retrieve something to a fucking zombies outbreak in 20 seconds. There's not a single line of dialogue explaining how or why. And the guy that initiated the zombies outbreak, we don't learn anything from him. We don't know his name, what group he's in, why did he do what he did. And since we don't have enough information, we can't care enough about the antagonist. The problem with the Chaos storyline is that most of the context and detail is locked behind a third-party product. The quality of that product is completely irrelevant because it wasn't even marketed. What could have been the better idea is, instead of making a comic book about the Chaos storyline, you could have made a campaign on Black Ops 4 based on the Chaos storyline. It would have been a great opportunity to make a campaign based on adventure instead of military. It could have been like an Uncharted game. What a huge missed opportunity. Let's go back to Void of Despair before I get off topic. The trial initiated by the Sentinel artifact makes absolutely no sense. For example, why am I killing Catalyst zombies by electrical outlets? And why does that create a portal? In 9, your job was to please the 4 gods. That makes sense. But Voyage doesn't follow this example. The artifact that we see in Void of Despair is the Norse Sentinel artifact. It would have been a perfect opportunity to make an Easter egg based on Norse mythology. But I guess these ideas are just not creative enough. The gameplay side of things on this map isn't nearly as bad as the story. The steps people hate, the planet step and the clock step, I feel are very over-exaggerated. Granted, if you don't have a way to hold the zombie off, like you don't have Winter's Wail or you don't have a teammate, it can be a pain in the ass to do these steps, but they're really not as bad as people make them out to be. And the boss fight on this map is fucking incredible. To describe it in one sentence, Voyage of Despair was afraid of its own shadow. The map doesn't embrace its setting or its lore, which makes it completely disconnected from its own gameplay. And it's why people preferred 9 over this map. However, what both launch maps suffer from is their terrible characterization. Now, I can't be too harsh on the story of both of these maps because they're the first 2 maps of the Chaos storyline. So obviously in the later DLC we're gonna get to know more about the story. At the time we didn't know when DLC 1 was scheduled, so we're basically waiting for trailers to come out showing us when it's going to release. For those of you who weren't around for it, we basically had almost nothing about DLC 1 for almost 2 months, right? And then, okay, I just downloaded the new Black Ops 4 update. Pretty sure they didn't update zombies that much, so let's go play a game of Wait. Something feels off. When did they release this? So I'm going to be starting this section with a bit of story time from me. I remember the day this map came out. I downloaded Black Ops 4's update, I went to play a game of 9, and then I got fucking jump scared. I was convinced at the time that my game was glitched and I got an early build of the map by accident. But no, Treyarch released this map without a single form of marketing. Now, it wasn't released to everyone at the same time. The first people who got it was in New Zealand, and people in New Zealand recorded the intro cutscene and posted it on YouTube. So basically, we got the intro cutscene, not even from Treyarch, 2 days before it was released to the globe. I can't believe I'm saying this, but in order for marketing to work, you have to show your product. That's like lesson 0 in marketing. Now, I'm not 100% certain of this, but from what I heard, Dead of the Night was supposed to be released on launch date. But the reason it wasn't released was because the celebrity casts weren't finished with their voice acting. Again, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but that's what I heard. If that's the case, then probably the reason why it wasn't marketed was because of very poor scheduling. But regardless, the lack of hype for this map absolutely affected its performance. And since there was no interest in this DLC because, well, most people didn't even know that it existed or released, it put the Chaos storyline in a very terrible position. Oh, and that intro cutscene? Yeah, that put that shit in the grave. So this map is a prequel to Void of Despair, and the map takes place in Alistair Rhodes' mansion. I will be honest, this scene in the beginning is amazing. While we're roaming around the manor, there's this aura of mysteriousness that I like. But slowly as you progress through the scene, it becomes less and less immersive. One of the funniest things about the cutscene is that everyone inside the manor is just 4 character models that are just multiplied. There's also the fact that, again, there's too much going on without any context. Again, when in a party, and then there's this sudden tone shift of, oh, there's some guy that's captured in the wine cellar. And again, just picture that you've literally just noticed that this map released. You've never read the comics, and you look at this guy, you don't know who he is. And you don't even know who captured him and why they captured him. And because of that, there is no reason to care. And hats off to Treyarch for creating 4 new characters in a story where the 4 new characters that we already got, we don't know anything about. And these characters have such little depth and importance to the story that I genuinely cannot name a single one of them except for one, and that's Godfrey. Anyway, as the scene progresses, they start the trial. And the 4 characters that we play as are not affected by it because of the glyphs that Godfrey drew on the ground. Why did he draw them? I genuinely have no idea. Oh, and the people that did start the trial, they disappeared. They literally do not appear on the map whatsoever. To rephrase Actman in one of his videos, if we don't know anything about the conflict, then we have no reason to care about it. And if we don't care about the conflict, then we don't care about the characters overcoming it. And if we don't care about the characters, we don't care about the story. And if we don't care about the story, then why was this created? This to me was the nail in the coffin of the Chaos storyline. And for that reason, I'm not gonna talk about the story anymore. So let's finally go into the gameplay of this map. I think Dead of the Night, inarguably, is the least casual zombies map of all time. At least from the Treyarch entries. The reason I say that is obviously the map was not marketed, it was a DLC, and on top of that, it's probably one of the most complicated maps in zombies. If you do not know anything about this map and you're trying to learn it by yourself, it is almost impossible to find anything important without guides. First, let's talk about the simplest thing on this map, and that's the map design, which is basically 1 box in the middle and 4 branching pathways in each direction. And there's actually 2 spawn rooms on this map. You can spawn in either side by yourself, but if you're playing with 2 or 3 more people, you would be split into 2 teams and you would link up in the central artifact. Now, I don't think it has the same impact as Varrock does because you only have to open 2 doors to get to the Sentinel artifact, but it's still a pretty cool feature regardless. But that ends it with anything simple on this map. When I first played this map when it launched, I got to the Sentinel artifact and I could not for the life of me figure out how to get Pack-a-Punch. The reason for this is because this is the most complicated Pack-a-Punch process I think we've ever gotten. In order to get Pack-a-Punch, you have to do 3 challenges. But in order to do them, first you have to activate them. Now, how do you activate them? For each challenge, there is 1 gazing stone that is hidden inside a vase. You will know it's the right vase when there's a bunch of little particles on top of it. Once you find that vase, you have to either shoot it or knife it and then get 4 zombie souls. Then you can gaze into the stone and know what challenge you're doing. And you have to do that for every other challenge in order to activate them. The 3 challenges are as follows. The first one is you have to kill a bunch of vampires by one of the perks. The second one requires you to go to one of 3 clocks and adjust them. And the third one wants you to find a certain item or painting around the map, interact with it, and escort a ghost to a certain location on the map. Once you finish all challenges, each of them will give you a tuning fork. And then you can open up the forest and get Pack-a-Punch. In my opinion, a Pack-a-Punch process should never be so complicated that you have to look up a guide on YouTube. And this is not the only map that does this. Maps like Shadows of Evil and Zetsubo, as much as I love them, should not have a Pack-a-Punch process so complicated that it forces you to go to a third-party website. I know some people prefer the more complicated maps, but at least the 2 necessities power and Pack-a-Punch should be simple, and the rest of the new features on this map should have been complicated. One of these new features that I fucking love, by the way, is Silver Bullets. Silver Bullets, in my opinion, is the best rendition of free ammo we've ever gotten. Silver Bullets allows you to refill ammo in any normal weapon in your inventory like it's a wall weapon. The only requisite is that you have to gain parts around the map and make it in a workbench. And I'm surprised that this wasn't a stable feature throughout all of Black Ops 4. To me, it's much better than the ammo caches in Cold War, because the ammo caches in Cold War are just there when you spawn in. But Silver Bullets is something that you have to acquire. And it also doubles as a damage buff to a certain enemy type on this map. Speaking of the enemy types, let's talk about them. There's 6 enemy types on this map. 4 of them are the catalysts returning from the previous 2 maps, which I'm fine with. The next one is the werewolf. The werewolf is one of my favorite bosses in Black Ops 4. Again, I like the fact that you can get silver bullets and deal with him easier. But even if silver bullets didn't exist, the werewolf would have still been a good addition to Dead of the Night. What isn't a good addition to this map, though, is the vampires. Now look, they do fit the aesthetic of this map. I can't deny that. But they are so infuriating. As Tim Hansen put it, they're basically a larger, more agile, and more powerful denizen. And the main problem with them is their spawn rate is so high. Their spawn rate is higher than the catalysts. I think what would have worked better if they had their own dedicated round, and then later on they spawn in with the zombies, but with a significantly toned down spawn rate. Unfortunately, they were never adjusted this way. If they were, I think the boss enemies on this map would have been perfect. Another thing that I love about this map is the wonder weapon. The Alistair's Folly is one of the more unique weapons in zombies. The weapon has a base state and 2 upgrades. You can get the base state pretty early, and it's basically a ray gun without the splash damage, which makes it very good for early rounds. When you upgrade it to its first upgrade, the Chaos Theory, you retain that ray gun shot, but then you get a charge shot. The charge shot can give you one of 2 outcomes. One of them is similar to the Ice Staff, where it's a small tornado, and the other one is a yellow base that keeps the zombies away from you. The last upgrade is the Alistair's Annihilator. This upgrade gives 2 more outcomes to the charge shot of the weapon. The first one is a fireball that disintegrates zombies, and the second one, being my personal favorite, is a green base that shrinks the zombies to death. Now yes, it is a little bit complicated to get this thing, but once you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to get, and it's one of the more effective weapons on BO4. Now let's talk about this map's Easter egg. I'm not going to talk about the story because I just don't care at this point. The Easter egg requires you to get 3 stones in order to enter the boss fight. Each stone requires you to do a certain challenge, and then after that do a lockdown. You can do any of these challenges in any order, and you can also do them simultaneously. All of the challenges for each of the stones are pretty good, except for the one in the greenhouse. So in order to do this challenge, you have to do 2 things. The first thing you have to do is that you have to adjust the Atlas statue in a certain way. Like Voyage of Despair, if you're playing solo and you don't have Winter's Wail, this step is a fucking pain in the ass. But that's not really the step that bothers me. The step that really bothers me is the tally step. You have to find 3 symbols around the map that have 7 locations in total. And once you find a symbol, you have to find 3 other locations around it that have scratch marks. You have to count these scratch marks in all of the 3 locations. And then once you find all of the 3 symbols, you have to put them in a certain order from the lowest amount of scratch marks to the highest amount of scratch marks. This step to me is worse than both the clock step and the planet step from Voyage. Because this is one of the only Easter egg steps where I have to always look up a guide regardless of how many times I've done it. Whereas for the other 2 Voyage steps, I got the locations down the first couple of times that I've done them. But other than that step, the rest of this Easter egg is pretty good. And the boss fight with the giant werewolf is so much fun. Dead of the Night to me was a better map than both 9 and Voyage of Despair. But it's unfortunate that the way the story handled on this map is way worse than both of them. While Voyage was a bad start with it being in the middle of the story, and 9's purpose being just a footnote in the narrative, at least both of these maps contributed to the story in some capacity. Dead of the Night was a complete waste of time. And it's a shame too, because if this was the map that introduced the original Chaos crew instead of the celebrity voice cast, it would have been a much better introduction to the Chaos storyline. The idea that I have is to bring in Shaw, Diego, and Bruno, but instead of playing as Scarlet, we play as Alistair. And then in the end of the Easter egg, after we get introduced to him and we like him, he gets captured, and then we care a lot more than if he were to be captured in an intro cutscene when we've never seen him before. But really, the story was the least of this map's problems. Its poor marketing made this map dead on arrival, and it killed Black Ops 4 along with it. Due to a Disastrous DLC 1, Ancient Evil was completely overlooked. And this is pure speculation, but I think this is the reason why they scrapped the last Chaos map. Because at this point, regardless of the quality of Ancient Evil, it would just be a futile attempt to try to revitalize the story. But surprisingly, this map turned out to be a masterclass of gameplay. Ancient Evil utilizes the mythology it's in more than any Chaos map in Black Ops 4. The other Chaos maps have their mythology integrated mostly in their aesthetic, while Ancient Evil does it mostly in its gameplay. But first, let's talk about this map's design. The map is basically two diamond-shaped islands with downhill verticality. The necessities like perks, pack-a-punch, and buildables are separated in half between these two islands, and each fast travel takes you from one island to the other. The pack-a-punch process is pretty unconventional. Like Dead of the Night, I don't think a lot of people can figure this out on their first playthrough without a guide. You have to find a golden bridle on the first island, use it to go to the next island, and then you have to shoot down 2 cages with your specialist weapon. You have to do a timed lockdown and then you can get Pack-a-Punch. Again, I am an advocate for the necessities to be simple, especially in this case, because if you don't know how to get the bridle, then you're locked in the first island. And if you don't know how to open up the cages for the birds, you're locked in the second island. So again, to learn Ancient Evil for 95% of the player base, you need guides. Adding on to that, Ancient Evil is the only map in Black Ops 4 that doesn't have wonder weapons in the box. You can get the Death of Orion, the Kraken, and Alistair's Folly in the box, but if you want to get any of the gauntlets on Ancient Evil, you have to do a quest. Speaking of the gauntlets to me are the best set of 4 wonder weapons we've ever gotten. To me, what makes a good wonder weapon isn't just its utility, it's the impression that really makes a wonder weapon fun. The Thunder Gun is not a fun wonder weapon because it kills 24 zombies at once. It's a fun wonder weapon because you send them across the fucking planet. It's the same thing with the gauntlets. The gauntlets are amazing and so satisfying to use because of the style. All of them have a single shot and a charge shot. The single shot is basically the exact same on all of them, but the charge shots between the 4 wonder weapons are different in their utility and how they look. The Hand of Gaia allows you to slam the ground, creating a tremor that kills anything in your path. The Hand of Charon creates a pool of blood that drags zombies to hell. The Hand of Uranus is probably the best out of the 4, and it allows you to create a continuous vortex that acts similarly to the Thunder Gun. And my personal favorite, the Hand of Hemera. You hold the trigger, and you do this. I mean, do I have to say anything else? Like, you summon a fucking yellow laser from the sky to kill zombies. It's a shame that Voyage and 9 don't have wonder weapons similar to this. When I look at the Death of Orion and the Kraken, and then compare them to the Ancient Evil gauntlets, they look uninspired in comparison. One criticism that I do hear a lot about the gauntlets is their lack of ammo. I don't really agree with this because their damage output is so good that if you were to have unlimited ammo, you would basically be invincible. But that's it for the wonder weapons of this map. Let's go into the boss zombies. Both the Catalyst and the Blightfather return, but there's 2 more boss enemies on this map. The first is the Skeletons, a different type of zombie that can only be killed with either headshots or the gauntlet. I find their inclusion kind of pointless, because when you're an accurate player and you kill them most of the time, they don't register as a new zombie. But on the other hand, if you're not an accurate player, they just waste time. I don't think they hurt the gameplay experience of this map at all. I just think they don't add to it either. The Gigany, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. The guy is a 4-armed dude that throws spears at you and has a shield. I think his health should be nerfed a little bit, but other than that, he's a pretty cool inclusion to this map. Oh, and I completely forgot to talk about the Pegasus Strike. You get 3 parts, put them together, you slam a rod into the ground, and a fucking mythological horse comes in and kills zombies with electricity. You can't tell me that that shit isn't sick. And man, let me talk about the Easter egg. This Easter egg is my personal favorite Easter egg. This map to me has the perfect difficulty for an Easter egg, the perfect complexity for an Easter egg, and the boss fight in the end, or the 2 boss fights in the end, are so much fun. And my favorite thing about this Easter egg is how short it is. On my second completion, I almost beat it under an hour. Granted, the only problem that I have with this Easter egg is that it's stuck with a story that I'm not interested in. But other than that, man, this Easter egg is incredible. There's only one difficult step on this Easter egg, and it's the raw step. It's the one where you have to get the hand of Hemera and put it in the Ra statue. Then the gauntlet will shoot a laser beam pointing at this wall, and skeletons will come and try to block that light. You have to keep killing these skeletons for 1 minute, because if they block the light long enough, then you've failed a step, and you have to do it again the next round. Now this step is a pain in the ass if you're doing it legitimately, but there's a way to skip it. When you open up Pack-a-Punch, a bunch of skeletons will spawn in that lockdown. If you don't kill them and the lockdown finishes and you go to the next island, these skeletons will stay there. So when you're in the Ra step and you keep one last zombie and you activate it, not a single skeleton will spawn in. So you can do other shit around the map while the beam is shooting at the wall. And man, the rest of the steps are so much fun to do. Like this one here where you have to kill zombies in a certain way to progress. And like Gorod Krovi, this map has 2 boss fights. The first one is with a corrupted Pegasus, and the second one is with a zombified Perseus. The Perseus boss fight is pretty good, but really the great boss fight of this map is the Pegasus. The 2 boss fights aren't absurdly difficult or comically easy. They're both in a difficulty where you have to know what you're doing, but you can run whatever weapons you like. And that's the perfect type of boss fight. The one major flaw, like every other Chaos map, is the story. Now granted, I will say that this is probably the best of the Chaos storyline we've ever gotten, but it's still just, there's so much that just doesn't make any sense. The map breaks the laws of the story by making you enter the central artifact while it's activated, even though it's stated that the way that it works is that it stops time until it's finished. And then when we finish the trial, the Oracle is revealed to be Medusa, which doesn't make any sense. Owen the gang finally sees Alistair Rhodes, and this is the second time we see him, and he's turned into stone. So, the first time we see him, he's captured. The second time we see him, he's turned into stone. Now yes, he was a hostage and then he was turned into stone by Medusa. But again, we see such little of this character that there's not a single cutscene in the entire game where we see him speak. And in the middle of the Easter egg, Bruno kills Shaw and then uses the Scepter of Ra to revive him, which makes them susceptible to the cult's control. Now, this could mean one of 2 things. Either that when someone is resurrected by the Scepter, they become evil, or they become more susceptible to the cult's control. The latter doesn't make any fucking sense because Bruno is the one holding the scepter. The former is equally as confusing because why would it do that? Now to be fair, that could have been explained in the last Chaos map, but we'll never know. But for now, this is the end of the Chaos storyline. What a fucking mess. It's clear to me that Treyarch didn't have the freedom to construct this story the way that they wanted. The story is rushed, incoherent, and all over the place. Maybe if they didn't make any Ether maps and only focus on Chaos, they would have had probably better time to work with the story. But who knows? Anyway, like the last video, I'm gonna give you a quick ranking of these maps. My favorite is Ancient Evil, then Dead of the Night, then Voyage, and then 9. And that's the end of the video.